The winter air bit at the faces of the security detail as they scanned the perimeter of the nondescript facility buried deep in the Ural Mountains. Snow fell in thick, heavy flakes, providing additional cover for what was already one of Russia's most secretive locations. 300 meters below the surface, Vladimir Putin sat at the head of a large oak table, his expression unchanged as his defense minister delivered the latest intelligence briefing. Mr. President, our sources confirm American Patriot missile systems are now fully operational along the Polish border. Their effective range extends 20 kilometers into our buffer zone. Putin nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving the satellite imagery displayed on the large screen before him. The bunker, known only to top military brass and a handful of trusted advisors, served as Command Center Ural, a hardened facility designed to survive direct nuclear strikes. Today's meeting hadn't been scheduled until just 12 hours earlier, when intelligence reports suggested heightened NATO activity in the Baltic. "And the naval deployments?" Putin asked, his voice measured but firm. The defense minister switched to another satellite feed showing the Baltic Sea. "Two carrier groups, Mr. President. The USS Abraham Lincoln has moved into position here." He pointed to a blinking marker on the digital map, with supporting vessels arranged in standard defensive formation. Putin's security chief, Dmitry Volkov, leaned forward slightly. "Mr. President, given the current posture of NATO forces, I again recommend extending your stay at the facility for at least another 48 hours. Putin checked his watch, a simple piece, despite rumors of his collection of luxury timepieces, and considered the recommendation. He had already been at the bunker for 3 days, having arrived under the cover story of a routine inspection of strategic facilities. The presidential schedule showed him taking private meetings at his dacha outside Moscow. 24 hours, Putin replied finally. There's the matter of the Chinese delegation arriving in Moscow. Medvedev can handle the preliminary discussions, but I must be there for the final agreements. The room fell silent as an aide entered and whispered something into the ear of General Petrov, the commander of Russia's strategic missile forces. The general's face remained impassive, but those who knew him well could detect the subtle shift in his demeanor. "Mr. President," Petrov began, clearing his throat. "We've just received word that our early warning systems have detected unusual activity. American B-52s have departed from RAF Lakenheath in England. They appear to be conducting exercises, but they're carrying live ordnance." Putin's expression didn't change, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "How many aircraft?" 6 bombers, with fighter escort. Current trajectory suggests Baltic operation, but they could alter course. The Russian president tapped his finger on the polished wood table. "Show me." The screen changed to display the real-time positions of the American aircraft. Putin studied the formation, drawing on his years of intelligence background to assess the threat level. "Standard exercise formation," he noted, almost to himself. "Then, to the room, maintain current alert levels, but move our Western air defense groups to readiness level 2. Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu nodded and immediately relayed the orders via his secure tablet. "Mr. President, should we deploy additional fighter squadrons to the Western Military District?" Putin considered this for a moment. "Not yet. That could be misconstrued as escalation. For now, we observe." As the meeting continued, 300 kilometers away, in a nondescript warehouse outside Yekaterinburg, 4 men finished loading specialized equipment into an unmarked van. None wore identifying markers, though their movements betrayed military training. The leader checked his watch, a high-end Swiss chronometer that seemed out of place with his worker's attire, and nodded to his companions. 30 minutes until shift change at the perimeter. We move then. Back in the bunker, Putin's chief of staff interrupted the briefing with new information. Mr. President, we've just received intelligence that suggests the Americans may have compromised one of our secure communication channels. The SVR believes they intercepted diplomatic cables regarding your current location. Putin's face remained impassive, but those closest to him noticed the slight tightening around his eyes, the only visible sign of his concern. If the Americans had indeed intercepted communications about the bunker, it represented a significant security breach. More importantly, it meant his location was potentially compromised. Security Chief Volkov immediately spoke up. Mr. President, I must insist we relocate you to alternate facility granite immediately. Putin shook his head. Not yet. First, I want to know how this breach occurred. And who is responsible. The bunker's commander, a stocky colonel with a shaved head, entered the conference room and approached Volkov, whispering something in his ear. Volkov's expression darkened instantly. Mr. President, we have an urgent security situation. Our outer perimeter sensors have detected anomalous movement in Sector 7. Security teams are investigating, but I recommend we move you to the secondary command center within the facility. Putin stood, buttoning his suit jacket. Very well. As his security detail moved into protective formation around him, the lights in the bunker flickered momentarily before the backup systems engaged. A distant rumble could be felt even 300 meters underground. Report, Putin demanded as they moved briskly through the corridor. Unclear, sir, Volkov replied, pressing his finger to his earpiece. Communications with the surface are intermittent. We're getting fragmented reports of an explosion. What happened next shook the Kremlin to its very foundation. The entire facility trembled as a second, more powerful explosion rocked the surface above them. Emergency lighting activated along the floor, guiding personnel toward shelter areas. Multiple detonations at the surface access points, reported the security officer jogging alongside Putin. Preliminary assessment suggests precision strikes. Putin's pace never slowed as they moved deeper into the facility. Are we under attack? Before anyone could answer, a third explosion, this one much closer, sent dust and concrete particles raining from the ceiling. The protective detail immediately covered Putin with their bodies as they hurried him toward the facility's hardened core. In the secure communications center adjacent to the secondary command post, chaos reigned as operators attempted to establish contact with Moscow and military commands. All surface communications are down, reported the communications officer, his face illuminated by the glow of backup systems. Satellite uplink is not responding. Switch to the redundant system, ordered General Petrov, who had joined the presidential entourage. Already tried, sir. It's also non-responsive. Putin, now safely within the secondary command center, remained outwardly calm as he assessed the situation. We need to establish what exactly is happening. Are we dealing with a technical malfunction, terrorist action, or a military strike? The answer came moments later as one of the security monitors flickered to life, showing footage from a surviving surface camera. The image was partially obscured by smoke and snow, but clear enough to reveal what appeared to be precision damage to the bunker's main access points. The pattern of destruction was unmistakable. Those are missile impacts, stated General Petrov grimly. Precision-guided munitions. Putin stared at the monitor, his expression unchanged but his mind racing through the implications. Origin. Impossible to determine with certainty without radar data, replied the general. But the precision suggests American cruise missiles or similar advanced systems. Security Chief Volkov approached with a tablet displaying a different camera angle. Mr. President, we've confirmed at least 4 distinct impact sites on the surface. All access points have been targeted with precision. This was not random. The implication hung in the air. Someone knew exactly where to strike. The bunker's location was supposed to be among Russia's most closely guarded secrets, known only to a handful of the highest-ranking officials. "We have a breach in our inner circle," Putin stated flatly, voicing what everyone was thinking. At that moment, the facility shook again as another explosion occurred, this one within the underground complex itself. "Internal detonation," reported a security officer, checking the facility schematics on his tablet. "Lower level 3, near the power generation systems." Putin turned to Volkov. "We have infiltrators." Volkov nodded grimly. "The perimeter breach must have been a distraction. We need to move you to the escape capsule immediately." The escape system was the bunker's last resort, a specially designed transport capsule that could travel through a narrow tunnel to an exit point 5 kilometers away, where transportation would be waiting. It was designed for the president and a maximum of 4 security personnel. Using it meant leaving everyone else behind. "Prepare the capsule," Putin ordered, "but first I need 3 minutes in the secure communications room." Despite Volkov's protests about security, Putin insisted. In the small, hardened communications room, Putin activated the highest level of encrypted communication, a system that connected directly to the Russian Strategic Forces Command. "This is Tungsten Actual," he said, using his designated code name. Authentication sequence follows. He proceeded to recite a series of seemingly random numbers and letters from memory. After a moment, a voice responded. "Authentication confirmed, Tungsten Actual. Standing by. Implement Contingency Protocol December. Authorization. Putin, Vladimir Vladimirovich, Presidential Code Red Banner." There was a brief pause before the voice responded. "Contingency Protocol December acknowledged. Implementation commencing. Timer set for 60 minutes. Putin terminated the communication and rejoined his security team. Protocol December was known to only 3 people in Russia. It would trigger a specific series of military readiness measures designed to respond to what appeared to be a decapitation strike against the Russian leadership. As they moved toward the escape capsule, the security team encountered resistance. 2 armed men in Russian military uniforms but without identifying insignia appeared at an intersection ahead. Before they could raise their weapons, Putin's security detail neutralized them with precise shots. "Not Russian special forces," muttered one of the security officers after quickly examining the fallen men. "Equipment is Russian, but modified. These are mercenaries." They continued toward the escape system, encountering and eliminating 2 more infiltrators along the way. When they finally reached the capsule access point, they found it guarded by loyal security forces who had established a defensive perimeter. "Mr. President," reported the commander, "we've identified at least 3 separate enemy teams within the facility. They appear to be targeting critical systems and searching specific areas, including your original location." Putin processed this information as he was ushered toward the capsule. "They knew where to find me." "It appears so, sir." The escape capsule, essentially a reinforced cylindrical pod with seating for 5, was ready for departure. As the security team prepared to seal Putin inside with his personal security, another explosion rocked the facility, closer this time. "They're targeting the escape system," Volkov realized aloud. "They know about the capsule." Putin made a rapid decision. Change of plans. "The capsule leaves with Colonel Baranov inside." He gestured to an officer of similar build and coloring. Volkov understood immediately. The decoy might buy them precious time and confusion. As the colonel was quickly briefed and provided with Putin's jacket and a similar watch, Putin turned to his security chief. "We take the maintenance tunnels to auxiliary exit 3. The original bunker designs included several emergency exits designed for maintenance and supply, not for presidential evacuation. They were less secure but also less likely to be known to infiltrators. As the capsule departed with the decoy, Putin and a reduced security team of 3 men made their way through narrow maintenance corridors. Behind them, they could hear gunfire as the remaining security forces engaged the infiltrators. "We have 4 kilometers of tunnels before we reach the surface," Volkov explained as they moved. "The exit emerges in a maintenance shed for a mining operation that serves as our cover." The journey through the dimly lit tunnels was tense. Twice they had to stop and wait as they heard movement ahead, likely infiltrators searching for alternate routes. After nearly an hour of cautious advancement, they reached the final ascent to the surface. "Communications still down?" Putin asked. Volkov checked his secure device. "Yes, Mr. President. They must be using localized jamming equipment." Putin nodded. "Once we're clear of the jamming, implement emergency broadcast protocol. Full authentication required. I need to address the nation before false information spreads." The security chief looked grim. "Mr. President, we must consider the possibility that this attack is part of a larger operation. Perhaps even a coup attempt coordinated with external forces." "I'm well aware of that possibility, Dmitry Alexeyevich," Putin replied, using Volkov's patronymic to emphasize the gravity of the moment. "Which is why Protocol December is already in motion." The final stretch of tunnel sloped upward at a steep angle. At the top, a heavy steel door secured the exit. One of the security officers moved forward to enter the access code, but Putin held up his hand. "Wait, if they've compromised the main facility, they may have information about the emergency exits as well." Volkov nodded in agreement. "We proceed with caution." They allowed one security officer to advance alone. He carefully entered the access code and positioned himself to the side as the door mechanism engaged. As the door began to swing open, a burst of gunfire erupted from outside, bullets ricocheting off the metal door. The security officer returned fire, providing cover as Volkov pulled Putin back down the slope. "At least 2 shooters," reported the officer as he retreated to their position. They were waiting. Putin's mind worked rapidly, analyzing the situation. "They've anticipated our movements too precisely. This level of intelligence suggests a traitor at the highest levels," Volkov finished the thought. Just then, their secure communication device emitted a low-priority alert. Volkov checked it. "Mr. President, the escape capsule has emerged at its exit point. Heavy fighting reported. No confirmation on the status of the occupant." Putin nodded grimly. The decoy had served its purpose, creating confusion and dividing the enemy forces. Now they needed to capitalize on that confusion. "Alternative?" Putin asked. Volkov hesitated before responding. "There's maintenance shaft 7. It wasn't designed as an escape route. It leads to the ventilation systems and emerges 2 kilometers east in the forest. It would be very tight, and portions may require crawling." "Show me," Putin ordered. The shaft was indeed narrow, barely wide enough for a man to traverse on his hands and knees. For nearly an hour, the president of the Russian Federation crawled through dust and darkness, followed by Volkov and one remaining security officer. The other had stayed behind to secure their rear against pursuit. When they finally emerged into the bitter cold of the Ural winter night, they found themselves in dense forest, snow falling heavily around them. The ventilation outlet was disguised as a small pump house in a clearing. In the distance, they could see flashes of light and hear the dull thud of explosions near the main facility. "We need transportation and secure communications," Putin said, brushing dust from his clothing. Volkov pointed through the trees. "There's an emergency cache 500 meters in that direction. Basic supplies, weapons, communication equipment, and transportation." The cache turned out to be a small underground bunker beneath a hunting cabin. Inside, they found snowmobiles, weapons, cold weather gear, and secure communication equipment designed to penetrate jamming. As Volkov worked to establish communications, Putin changed into the provided cold weather gear. The security officer took up position at the cabin's window, scanning the surrounding forest. Connection established, Volkov announced finally. Secure line to Moscow command. Putin took the communication device. This is Tungsten Actual. Authentication code Sierra November Whiskey 973. Connect me to Granite Shield. After several tense moments, a voice responded. Authentication confirmed. Granite Shield standing by. Status report, Putin demanded. Protocol December initiated as ordered. Strategic forces at heightened readiness. Defense Council convened at alternate command center. Initial assessment suggests limited operation targeting only your location, not a full-scale attack. And the infiltration team. Foreign trained operatives using Russian equipment. Preliminary identification suggests mercenaries from various backgrounds. Still determining who hired them. Putin processed this information. I'm proceeding to extraction point Delta. Have helicopter transport ready, and I want the full Security Council assembled at alternate command center 3 when I arrive. Understood. Tungsten Actual. As Putin ended the communication, Volkov approached with a grim expression. Mr. President, we've received an update on the escape capsule. Colonel Baranov was killed when the reception point was ambushed. The attackers believed they had eliminated you. Putin nodded solemnly. Baranov was a good man. His family will be provided for. After a moment of silence, he continued, this works to our advantage. If they believe I'm dead, it gives us time to identify who is behind this. The security officer at the window suddenly tensed. Movement in the trees, 300 meters south. Volkov immediately moved to Putin's side, weapon drawn. We need to move now. They quickly gathered essential equipment and moved to the snowmobiles housed in a small shed adjacent to the cabin. As they prepared to depart, they heard the distinctive sound of helicopter rotors in the distance. Could be search teams looking for survivors, Volkov suggested. Or our extraction, Putin countered. The security officer checked a small device. No IFF signal. Not one of ours. That settled it. They mounted the snowmobiles and set off through the forest, away from the approaching helicopter. The thick snow muffled the sound of their engines somewhat, and the dense tree cover provided concealment from aerial observation. They traveled for nearly 40 minutes through the darkness, using night vision equipment to navigate the difficult terrain. Eventually, they reached a small clearing that served as Extraction Point Delta, a pre-designated emergency pickup location. Volkov established communication again. Extraction Point Delta reached. Request immediate pickup. The response came quickly. Confirmed. Friendly asset inbound. 7 minutes. As they waited in the darkness, Putin reflected on the day's events. The precision of the attack, the detailed intelligence the enemy possessed, the coordination required, all pointed to a conspiracy reaching into the highest levels of Russian leadership. When we return to Moscow, Putin said quietly, I want a complete security review. Every person with knowledge of the bunker location, every communication regarding my movements, everything. Volkov nodded. It will be done, Mr. President. The sound of an approaching helicopter broke the silence. This time, the security officer confirmed it was broadcasting the correct IFF signal, a friendly asset. As the helicopter landed and they boarded, Putin knew that what had happened today would reshape Russian politics. Someone had tried to eliminate him, and they had nearly succeeded. There would be consequences, severe ones, for those responsible, whether they were foreign powers, domestic traitors, or both. 4 hours later, as dawn broke over Moscow, the Russian people awakened to extraordinary news. State television interrupted normal broadcasting with an emergency announcement. There had been an attack on a strategic facility, they were told. Foreign-backed terrorists had attempted to strike at the heart of Russian leadership. But the president had survived. When Vladimir Putin appeared on screen, seated at his desk in an undisclosed location, the message was clear: the attempt had failed. His expression was stern, his voice unwavering as he addressed the nation. Citizens of Russia, today I speak to you after an unprecedented act of aggression against our sovereignty. Foreign elements, working with traitors within our own government, attempted to assassinate your legally elected leadership and destabilize our nation. They have failed. He paused, his eyes boring into the camera. To those responsible, both foreign and domestic, know this: your actions will not go unanswered. Russia has survived invasions, revolutions, and attempts at subjugation throughout its 1,000-year history. We have always emerged stronger. Behind the scenes, the manhunt had already begun. Within the first 24 hours, 3 generals and a deputy minister were taken into custody. Foreign intelligence networks reported unusual movements of Russian naval assets and strategic bombers. 2 days after the attack, American and European intelligence agencies observed what appeared to be a purge within the upper echelons of Russian military and political leadership. At least 17 high-ranking officials were removed from their positions, some publicly, others simply disappearing from view. In a secure conference room deep beneath the Kremlin, Putin sat with his most trusted advisors, those who had been definitively cleared of any involvement in the plot. The investigation has identified the primary conspirators, reported the head of the FSB. Evidence suggests cooperation between elements within our own government and foreign intelligence services. Putin's expression remained impassive. Names. The FSB directors slid a folder across the table. Inside were profiles of 8 individuals, 3 military officers, 2 from the diplomatic corps, a deputy minister, and 2 oligarchs who had once been considered loyal. And the foreign connection? Still determining the full extent, but we have confirmed communications between the conspirators and intelligence operatives from 2 NATO countries. Putin nodded slowly. Ensure the interrogations are thorough. I want to know everything: who else was involved, what they hoped to achieve, who funded them. Yes, Mr. President. As the meeting concluded, Putin remained seated, reviewing additional intelligence reports. The attack on the bunker had been the most serious threat to his leadership since he had first come to power. The fact that the conspirators had possessed such detailed intelligence about one of Russia's most secret facilities was deeply troubling. Over the following weeks, the consequences of the failed attack reverberated through Russian society and international relations. The state media painted the incident as a heroic survival against Western aggression. Putin's approval ratings, which had been slowly declining, surged as Russians rallied around their leader. Internationally, relations with several Western nations deteriorated sharply as Putin publicly accused them of involvement in the assassination attempt. Economic sanctions, cyber operations, and diplomatic expulsions followed on both sides. Within Russia itself, security services conducted the most extensive internal review in post-Soviet history. Thousands of officials were investigated, hundreds were dismissed, and dozens faced criminal charges. The military leadership underwent a significant reorganization, with trusted officers promoted to key positions. 3 months after the attack, at a special session of the Security Council, Putin made a decision that would alter the course of Russian foreign policy for years to come. The events at the Ural facility demonstrated our vulnerabilities, he told the assembled officials. The infiltration of our most secure systems by foreign-backed agents cannot go unanswered. Today, We approve Operation Northern Response. The details of the operation were known to only 5 people in the room. It would involve asymmetric retaliation against those deemed responsible for the attack, not through conventional military means, but through a combination of cyber warfare, economic disruption, and targeted operations designed to expose and embarrass foreign governments. 1 year to the day after the missile strike on the bunker, as Putin stood at the window of his Kremlin office watching a military parade in Red Square, he reflected on how the attack had changed Russia's trajectory. The country was more isolated internationally but internally more unified. The security services had been purged and strengthened. Most importantly, those who had believed they could remove him from power had learned a painful lesson. His secure phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. Yes. Mr. President, Operation Northern Response Phase 3 is complete. The information has begun circulating in Western media. Putin allowed himself a small smile as he watched the troops marching below. Good. Monitor the situation and keep me informed. He ended the call and turned back to the window. The assassination attempt had been a critical moment, not just for him personally, but for Russia. His enemies had tried to eliminate him, believing his removal would weaken Russia. Instead, they had only made both him and the country more resilient. In the end, the missile strike on the secret bunker hadn't destroyed Vladimir Putin. It had given him something he had been searching for: the justification to eliminate his enemies, both foreign and domestic, and consolidate his control more completely than ever before. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe to FictionWire Russia. This is a fictional story created purely for entertainment.